Hello and welcome to the WeExtra Online Academy. My name is Chris and I'll be your tutor for today. In our last video we looked at question 4. In today's video we'll look at question 5 of the IGCSE Biology Paper 4-1 Winter 2019. Okay. Question 5. Figure 5.1 shows an angiogram of a heart before and after treatment for cardio heart disease, CHD. An angiogram is an image of blood flow through the blood vessels of the heart. Question A. The arrow on figure 5.1 shows the position of the blocked blood vessel. Okay, so here it shows you your blocked blood vessel before and after treatment. Okay, so the blood flow is quite restricted here, but this is obviously much better after treatment. Now, whenever you're talking about coronary heart disease, it only really refers to one blood vessel, and this is the coronary artery. Okay, now this blood vessel is extremely important as it supplies blood to the heart tissue directly. If this gets blocked, you have a potential of dying. Okay, so it needs to get treated as soon as possible. Question 2i. The blockage is caused by a blood clot. Describe how a blood clot forms. Now, some students might start talking about plaque being deposited on the coronary artery or high blood pressure, or dehydration, or something that could have been the cause of the blood clot itself, but it doesn't actually ask you for that. It just says describe how the blood clot forms. Now, this forms by the cell structures in the blood called platelets. Okay, these platelets are cell fragments and they're made in the bone marrow. Okay, now you don't need to fully explain the whole chemical conversions here. That's more at A level, but for GCSE you would know that they convert the soluble fibrinogen, so they convert soluble fibrinogen into insoluble fibrin. Yeah. Now, actually, that sentence there is actually 4 marks, but let's keep going. So this forms a mesh. Okay, this forms a mesh. Okay, this forms a mesh, and this, what happens is that it traps the red blood cells. Yeah, it traps the red blood cells. Okay, and that's what your blood clot is. It's just a lump of trapped red blood cells because of this conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin. Okay, mentioning this with all 5 marks are available here in this answer. Okay. State the name of a drug that can be used to treat coronary heart disease. Well, the main ones you refer to in the course are statins. You could also refer to aspirin. Okay. For any particular doctors out there or potentially aspiring doctors, you could also mention warfarin. Okay, warfarin is another one. You've got beta blockers. Okay. And you've also got ACE inhibitors. Okay, now you don't need to know all of these, but if you want to go a bit overboard with examples, here's a good list for you to remember as medication to treat heart disease. Most of them around here are all designed to prevent blood clotting. Okay. Question B. Many health specialists think that the risk of coronary heart disease can be reduced by doing regular exercise. A long-term study of a large group of women was used to test this hypothesis. The women were between ages 35 and 45 years old at the start of the study. Every 2 years, the same group of women were asked how much they were exercising. After 28 years, the researchers analyzed their data. They calculated the average time they spent exercising per week. They put women into categories to determine how much by exercise they had done. And for each category, they calculated the number of women who died from the coronary heart disease. The results are shown in figure 5.2. Okay, so here's our information here. Let's have a look at the question. So, calculate the percentage decrease in number of CHD deaths per 10,000 women between those who did no exercise and those who exercised between 4.1 to 10 hours a week using the data from figure 5.2. So you want to know the number of women deaths who did no exercise and the ones who did between 4.1 and 10 hours per week. And then you have to calculate your answer to the nearest whole number, all right? It clearly says whole number. So let's go back and look at the data. Okay, so looking at the data, the first thing you'd want to do is identify the scale on the y-axis. Okay, it's got decimal points here, and people will rush this question and make simple mistakes. So what you can do here is that 5 squares equals a total value of 0.2. You can see this from the scale. Therefore, 1 square equals 0.04 in value. And that becomes very important when you come to read this graph. Again, 0.04. So looking at here, if this is our value, 1.8, and you've got 2 squares, this total value here is 1.88 in value. Okay, so that's the value of those who have done no exercise per week. Okay, and if we look here at this value, which is the other one, this one is only 1 square. So the total value here is 0.04 deaths per 10,000. Okay, so from this data, we're going to go now back down to the question, do our working out. So looking at the data now, so we have an answer here of 1.88 and 0.04. All right, so the first thing you need to do is work out the difference, because it's asking for a percentage decrease. So the first thing you do is 1.88 minus 0.04, which would give you the value of 1.84. Okay, since this is your difference between the no exercise and those who did exercise at 4.1 hours and above, you need to divide this difference by the original, which is 1.88. Okay, and then you do times 100 for that one once you've worked out your value, and that would give you an answer of around about 98%. Okay, the answer before the rounding up would be 97.8 something, but it's asked you to give it to the nearest whole number, so you have to do that for this question. Okay, so you have, let's start with the for arguments. Okay, since this is a 5-mark question, you have to talk about both for and against. So let's have a start here. There's a clear benefit of this study being used, is that, you know, the trend as exercise increased, you know, the occurrence of deaths, or should we say the deaths by CHD decreased. Yeah, there's clearly a benefit to that. The data shows that. And you could use some data for that. So, you know, at 0, you know, hours of exercise per week, we had 1.88 deaths per 10,000 per 10K, you know, whereas, you know, between 4.1 and 10 hours, you had 0.04 deaths per 10K. Okay. Now, also some other things for this data is that you had the same group of people tested. Okay, you had the same group of people tested, which therefore would mean that any error based on person would be generally fairly reduced, as it would be a continued variable throughout the experiment. Okay, as you know, the more you change the variables, the more unreliable and inaccurate the information becomes. Okay, you also had the fact that data was collected fairly regularly. It clearly says that the data was collected every 2 years. Okay, so the data was collected regularly at 2-year intervals. Okay, intervals. Okay, so here's 4 potential answers for the for argument. Okay, so let's look at some of the things for against then. Okay, so these are some points for against. So, well, if we first look at the first one, is that, well, like all surveys where you're asking humans, there's human error. Okay, human error. Sometimes people lie and don't fill in the survey correctly, so may not be truthful data. Yeah, some people don't like to admit that they aren't doing exercise or lie when they're actually doing it. All right. Now, another thing to consider here is that it doesn't tell you the type of exercise. So type of exercise is not stated. Okay, so some people might consider just walking or intensive jogging. You know, there's obviously very clearly difference in the exercise. So the type of exercise is not mentioned. Okay. So that could clearly be a factor that led to the link in reduction. Okay, you've also got the idea here that there's only women being tested. Okay, so only women surveyed. Okay, now the other half of the population is men, or in theory should be around about 50-50, but you know, there could be a whole different set of results for men. Okay, although outside of this study, general data supports the idea that exercise does reduce the chance for coronary heart disease. You've also got a limited age range. Okay, so a limited age range. In this survey, it only looks at women between the age of 35 and 45. There clearly could be differences. You don't know if they did exercise before 35. You don't know if they're doing exercise after 45. There could be other factors here that played in that. Another thing to consider is, as I mentioned, other factors, but think about factors that could cause coronary heart disease. So this could be, e.g. smoking. It could also in diet, you know, and you could also talk about alcohol consumption. They are not considered in this survey. There's no way for them to include that information, or it would be able to provide another, should we say, another factor into what linked to it. Okay, it is possible that all those people who didn't do exercise are heavy smokers, drinkers, and have a very poor diet. Okay, it also could mean that those who are doing exercise, they could also have a very unhealthy diet, drink lots of alcohol, and smoke a lot. You just don't know. That information has not been included in this investigation. So this is why it's so important that you describe the for and against. Remember, it's about 3 marks per available per argument, so you need to talk about both sides of the argument. Okay. Question C. Exercise causes heart rate increase. Explain why exercise causes an increase in heart rate. Well, think about it this way. Your muscles are going to be doing lots of contraction, okay, and that's going to need lots of energy, which is released by aerobic respiration. And aerobic respiration needs more glucose and oxygen. And also the waste products, carbon dioxide, need to be removed faster, okay? Now, in what I just told you, that's about 6 marking points. So let's put that into words, okay? So during the heart rate increase, what happens is that blood supply to muscles increases, okay? This delivers more O2 and glucose. You can write the full one out, okay? For aerobic respiration to release energy for muscle contraction. Okay, and you can also say to remove CO2 faster also. Okay, so each line there is worth a marking point. Okay, it's a fairly easy question, but it says explain why. Okay, so it needs to say why, and this is a detailed explanation with all the keywords and vocabulary. Thank you for watching. Please register for a free demo on our website, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video.